pleasure not to be in Qatar today. I put my phone there, but you hear it buzzing. It's my WhatsApp group, which has been having lots of fun today with photos of empty shelves and rumors of Qatar petroleum banning its employees from leaving the country. All of this may be untrue, but it's all entirely believable, knowing how the country is run. So assume the worst. In a 2006 address to a meeting of Catholic jurists, Pope Benedict XVI spoke of the need to promote what he called healthy secularity. No concept proved more central to Benedict XVI's social thought than that of the secular. And he turned often to the language of healthy secularity when addressing topics ranging from religious freedom and human rights to the place of religion within Western culture. He spoke, for instance, about a, quote, positive secularity in a 2011 address to the Lutheran Church of Germany. In a 2011 meeting with the Brazilian ambassador to the Holy See, Benedict called for what he called a healthy secularism. During his 2008 visit to France, Benedict pressed for, quote, new reflection on the meaning and importance of laicite. Even before assuming the papacy, then Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger was already distinguishing positive secularism from negative secularism, the latter referring to a form of order that leaves no public space for the Catholic and Christian vision. And during his 2008 visit to the United States, Pope Benedict contrasted the, quote, positive concept of secularism that has traditionally prevailed in America with the negative secularism in Europe. Benedict was not the first to invoke this language of healthy secularity. The American Jesuit John Courtney Murray, for instance, argued in a 1966 article on religious freedom that without religion, society cannot progress towards a healthy secularity, but must inevitably regress along that line of history that leads from the laicist totalitarianism of Jacobin ideology to the even more bleak and inhuman totalitarianism of today. Prelates have also begun invoking this language and articulating the Vatican's social vision. Archbishop Angelo Amato, referencing John Paul II, as well as Pope Benedict in a lecture at the University of Notre Dame, spoke of the need to encourage an attitude of positive laicism that values the input of Christianity. Benedict's healthy secularity does not break with past impulses in Catholic social and political thought, so much as it extends and develops them. Most importantly, it continues the project of cultivating a Catholic voice from within the contours of modernity. At the same time, Benedict's frontal engagement with the secular marks a novel and intensifying turn within Catholicism's engagement with modern order. Whereas most Catholic social thought has taken shape around specific issues, for example, religious freedom, economic justice and development, human rights, family, gender, and sexuality, healthy secularity targets modern moral order in its totality, indeed in its very ontological form. By so doing, Benedict has inaugurated a more fundamental confrontation with the logic and the structure of the secular age that has important implications not only for the place of Catholic ideas within liberal political discourse, but of religious traditions more generally within the confines of late modern politics. What I want to do in this talk is three things. First, to explore what Benedict means or might mean by this concept of healthy secularity. Second, to assess the application of healthy secularity to law and legal thought. And finally, to consider whether the ideas embodied in healthy secularity offer a constructive basis for the development of a theological jurisprudence. Healthy secularity is most basically a proposal for the reconstruction of modernity in its political, social, and juridical forms. This has been the project of Catholic social thought in its regnant form for more than a century. That is to salvage modernity from within by reconstructing its meaning and its foundations. That is to say, modern Catholic social thought has sought to claim the language and categories of modernity: economic freedom, religious freedom, human rights, now the secular, while rejecting their dominant understanding and expression. This practice found its origins in the earliest documents of Catholic social thought. Pope Leo XIII, writing in 1888, argued for the need to cultivate a true liberty found in Christianity that would be counterposed against the false anthropology of modern liberalism. It inaugurated a practice by which the Church granted a simultaneous yes and no to the categories of the modern world. The Church affirms freedom, liberty, rights, and democracy. Yet by speaking in terms of true and false expressions of these categories, it also names the fundamental errors of liberal modernity. Catholic social thought thus accepts the structure of modern ideas and institutions, but moves to challenge the logic by which they are understood. The Church's aim in so doing is to embody and advance a true narration of modernity's meaning and potential that can only be fully realized in light of Christian insight. This critical turn towards, and indeed into, modernity reached its high point with the documents of the Second Vatican Council and its aftermath. Pope John the 23rd spoke in Mater et Magistra, 1961 encyclical, on social progress, of, quote, true community, true human values, true social order, true civilization. Pope Paul VI employed this language when discussing sexuality in Humane Vitae, writing of true mutual love, authentic love, true liberty, true happiness. Pope Paul VI followed a similar practice in an encyclical a year later, when he spoke of true human community, true values, true humanism, and authentic development. So healthy secularity builds upon and advances themes from this long debate about the Church's opening to the modern. The language Benedict invokes takes different forms. The adjectives authentic, positive, true, and healthy, paired with secular, secularity, laicism, or secularism. Yet the underlying impulse has remained consistent. Most basically, healthy secularity, as I'm referring to it, stands as an alternative to the ideological secularism that Benedict sees infesting Europe and the West more generally. As he noted in his 2005 lecture to Italian jurists, the fundamental problem with the secular, understood in its dominant form, is that it has come to mean the exclusion of religion and its symbols from public life by confining them to the private sphere and to the individual conscience. The secular has acquired what Benedict called an ideological understanding, in which it is commonly perceived today as the exclusion of religion from social contexts. He made a similar point in his 2006 book, Without Roots, in which he argued that secular values are now understood to entail, quote, freedom from religious constraints and the exclusion of Christian contents and values from public life. This is a theme that Benedict returned to repeatedly, including in a 2012 exhortation to the Church in the Middle East, in which he criticized the view that, quote, reduces religion to a purely private concern. In extreme and ideological form, this approach becomes a secularism, which denies citizens the right openly to express their religion and claims that only the state can legislate on the form which religion may take. Thus, against this so-called false secularism, healthy secularity acknowledges what Benedict has described as the place that is due God and his moral law to Christ and his church in human life, individual and social. It is a form of secular order that not only permits, but encourages and perhaps requires religion to inform political and legal meaning. But healthy secularity offers more than just a liberalism leavened with a strong dose of religion. It is also an attempt to offer a theological reconstruction of the secular and secular meaning. Moving beyond an either-or binary, healthy secularity offers an account of religion for the secular. In particular, the deeper project at work is to reclaim the idea of the secular as being rooted in Christian thought and understanding. It is not simply that Christianity can exist or coexist with the secular. Christianity is, for Benedict, the midwife of the secular. Thus, against an account of the secular that begins with the Enlightenment and the modern state, Benedict's genealogy emphasizes the role of Christianity in birthing the very idea and category of the secular. The secular finds its origin in Jesus' admonition to render unto Caesar that which is Caesar, and in the de-divinization of all earthly authority in light of Christ's kingship. Thus, against secularism, Benedict offers a, quote, secularity that is dependent even at its ontological level on forms of theological understanding. In offering this genealogy, Benedict moves to re-enchant the secular and to offer an alternative way of understanding the modern inheritance. The Enlightenment, Benedict claims, is of Christian origin. Its concepts and categories, including the secular, depend on Christianity for their genesis and their continued coherence. It was not then that modernity invented the secular, it was that modernity transformed the secular. What then are the implications of healthy secularity for law, and more specifically the relationship between secular law and religion? At the most basic level, healthy secularity stands for the proposition that law should be open to religious influence and religious expression. This dimension of healthy secularity has found concrete expression, for instance, in the Vatican's intervention in debates over references to God and Christianity in the proposed EU constitution, and in the recent European Court of Human Rights decision in Lauzi versus Italy, a case which concerned the display of crucifixes in Italian schools. In both of these instances, Benedict publicly defended an account of Europe linked with symbolic vestiges of religious meaning. Ongoing legal and political debates about the role of religion in the secular state disclose for Benedict a deeper contest over the very structure of modernity. Europe in particular, Benedict claims, has forgotten its history. Indeed, it has actively moved to eviscerate it. But a civilization needs what the Pope has called roots to survive, a sense of meaning and self-understanding that extends beyond the imminent frame. What might be otherwise dismissed as mere marginal skirmishes over the boundaries of religious freedom and symbolic religiosity come to stand for Benedict as a profound civilizational malaise that threatens the secular West. Yet Benedict also sees healthy secularity as implementing law at a more elemental level. Benedict's constructive jurisprudence emerges most clearly, albeit somewhat indirectly, in his writings on the relationship between religion and reason. I will offer some comments on this topic, drawing mainly from his dialogue on secularism with Jürgen Habermas and his controversial lecture at Regensburg. A central claim that emerged from these two addresses, or these two writings, is that modern secular order has become fundamentally unreasonable. Benedict's point in making this claim is not that modernity rejects reason as such, but that it has adopted a false and ultimately dangerous understanding of what reason is. The most insistent point that Benedict makes concerns the divorce of reason from nature, which in turn leads reason to become unmoored from its moral limits. Modern reason seeks out what Benedict calls a purity that is expressed most vividly in the quest for technological mastery over creation and personhood. In developing this claim, Benedict is attentive to the intellectual genealogy that links the reason of modernity to developments in late medieval theology, particularly the voluntarist notion that God's will is not bound by reason. So the argument goes, once divine will is severed from the bounds of reason, there is a loss of what Remy Bragg terms continuity between creator and creature. Reason thus no longer provides a point of contact between the human and the divine mind, and nature no longer provides the limiting context within which reason might operate. This concern about the unmooring of reason is the principal theme of Benedict's much remarked upon lecture at Regensburg. Although Benedict was severely criticized for his remarks here about Islam, the public outcry distracted from the broader argument of the address, which was not about Islam, but rather Western rationality. At base, Benedict's concern was with the unraveling of what he called the rapprochement between faith and reason that has defined and animated Christian culture in Europe. The Pope interestingly describes this process as a de-Hellenization, with the result being that faith and reason increasingly occupy distinct and ultimately autonomous spheres of meaning and activity, neither enriching nor limiting each other. The reason Benedict began his lecture by referencing the classical Islamic belief in God's absolute transcendence is that he sees an ironic Islamification unfolding within Western law and within the Western mind. Thus, even as Europe rallies against a purported Islamic threat to its secular values, the Pope intimates that Europe's secular order is being destroyed by its adaptation of a fundamentally, quote, Islamic approach to reason. Logos has been replaced by will, a reasoned secularity with dogmatic secularism. Western rationality has become fundamentally unreasonable. Given this posture, one might anticipate Benedict would call for a reassertion of traditional natural law approaches to the structuring of jurisprudence in public life. That is, the idea that the solution to the unreasonableness of secular culture lies in relinking its institutions and its laws to a stable, predictable, knowable, and universal form of reasoned moral order. Yet while Benedict acknowledges the importance of natural law within Catholic thought, and also affirms its importance to discourse within liberal democratic politics. He nevertheless views natural law as ill-suited to sustaining a healthy secular order within the conditions of late modernity. Perhaps his most revealing, is still somewhat cryptic remark about natural law was a comment that, quote, "this instrument has become blunt." We can interpret this claim on several levels. Firstly, it advances perhaps a pragmatic point about the use of natural law within political argumentation. Benedict's characterization of natural law as blunt is less a denigration of reason as such than a recognition of the difficulty with advancing claims based on nature and rationality in a post-evolutionary context. Claims to moral universality rooted in an account of a stable nature simply fail to resonate in a skeptical climate. They are received as morally blunt and unpersuasive. There's another sense, however, in which we might understand Benedict's hesitancy about natural law that turns on his understanding of the relationship between reason and religion. An important aspect of Benedict's concerns about natural law is that it all too often advances a form of reasoning severed from religion. In an attempt to uphold the validity of universal moral claims, certain forms of natural law thinking replicate the error of modernity by rendering reason autonomous from religion. It is not that natural law cannot lead to truths about human nature, but that these truths remain somehow always incomplete. In a revealing passage, for instance, Benedict writes of the need to give greater attention to the intrinsic relationship between gospel and natural law. In other words, it is only through the illumination of Christianity that the full logic of reason is disclosed. Nature is always already graced for Benedict, meaning that Christianity expands and completes what reason begins. Along these lines, Peter Casarella observes that Benedict does not reject modern secular reason, but rather insists that its positivistic and instrumental usages require a broadening that only Christian revelation can provide. Benedict's project of recovering reason is thus not to be understood, as it has in certain forms of natural law thought prominent among Catholics, as an attempt to cultivate a mode of moral and political thought that requires no recourse to theology or revelation. For Benedict, there is a necessary relatedness between reason and faith, and between reason and religion, which are called to, in his language, purify and help one another. A healthy secular order depends on the cooperative interplay of both reason and religion. Religion sustains and purifies reason. Reason refines and corrects religion. Neither is capable of nourishing a sustainable secular order alone. As I interpret Benedict, his aim is to complicate the terms on which we approach debate about the relationship between religion and secular law. Most obviously, he rejects an account of secular law that views religion as a problem for the secular, as a threat to secular values or secular order. But he is interestingly hesitant to view the alternative to this secularism as the opening of secular law to religious law, at least on the terms that this is sometimes proposed. It is here that we might reference interesting points of distinction between Benedict's approach and that taken by Rowan Williams, the former Archbishop of Canterbury, in his much commented upon lecture on civil and religious law in England. Most importantly, both Benedict and Williams identified a form of modern universalism, given shape and life through the secular law, as posing a threat to the capacity of communities, particularly religious communities, to live out and sustain their moral particularity. For Williams, one solution is to puncture this universality by opening the secular law to certain expressions of religious law. Religious law gains space apart from the secular law, and the secular law is thereby denied a monopoly over both public meaning and private loyalties. The reach of the secular law is in this respect checked. Benedict's healthy secularity, by contrast, offers an account of religion going through the secular law, accepting the basic construct of the secular as the ordering ground of public life, even as Christianity aims to reimagine the meaning and foundations of this secular. It is theology that alone can offer a way of preventing the secular from collapsing in on itself, and it is the proper vocation of theology to pursue this vocation. And it is through recovering a full account of reason that this can be accomplished. Christianity, Benedict notes, is the religion of the Logos that offers a vision of what he called creative reason, which in the crucified God is made manifest as love. This becomes then a form of reason that subverts the universal and ultimately violent pretensions of the universality embodied in modernity's account of secular law. This distinction between Williams and Benedict, while seemingly modest and theoretical, has quite profound implications for thinking about how theology might engage the secular in general and the secular law more specifically. In the end, Benedict wants to uphold a civilizational account of the West, and moreover a civilizational account that continues to be animated by the creative tensions between Athens and Jerusalem, reason and revelation, universality and particularity. It is for this reason that Benedict is so concerned with the idea of Europe, preserving it not only as a political construct, but as a living reality. Healthy secularity positions Christianity as the savior of secular modernity, even as it names deep ruptures within this modern project that threaten its very viability. Healthy secularity is thus as much about lamentation and critique as it is a positive vision for the reconstruction of a social and political order. Yet it also rests on a confidence that the cultural and intellectual resources exist to allow the secular to become a constructive point of enrichment and engagement between law and religion, rather than a site of exclusion and ongoing tension. This is, of course, a fragile project, and one perhaps misguided in its sanguinity, but it is also bold in its refusal to cede the secular, both as a linguistic construct and as a lived reality. Healthy secularity offers, in Benedict's vision, Christianity as a gift to the life of the secular world, the secular, and envisions secular law as a meeting point of human creativity, reason, and divine will, rationality. The secular, properly understood, becomes a limited but also enchanted sphere of meaning. Whether, however, this vision of a healthy secularity can find resonance within the confines of the, quote, secular West is a more complex question, and one about which I think some skepticism is certainly required. Thank you.